If you want to show that your English is at an advanced level, you want to go beyond writing basic English in short texts. You want to write with advanced English in longer texts. The kind of English that will take you from here to here. So how do we do that? Well, before you begin, you need to remember that different types of long English texts require advanced English in different ways. In this video, I'm going to go through all of the text you can see here, starting with the ones that are less formal and which have flexible grammar, working our way up to the texts which are more formal, with more fixed grammar. So let's start with poetry. I'm going to use a famous poem by Elizabeth Bishop called One Art, and it demonstrates that in poetry, rhythm, rhyme and feeling are more important than grammatical accuracy. First of all, have a look at this clause here, the hour badly spent. Hold on, shouldn't there be an and before the hour badly spent? Except the fluster of lost door keys and the hour badly spent. Well, and has been left out here because it doesn't help the rhythm of the poem. So omission of grammar is a common feature of poetry, because grammar is not the only thing that matters when you're writing a poem. Also, what do you think of the hour badly spent? Surely it should be the other way round. The hour spent badly. And this is an example of changing the word order. In poetry, we keep all of the words the same, but we may change the order around in order to keep that rhythm that we want. And there's something grammatically strange about the end of the poem too. Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Places and names and where it was you meant to travel. Why do we have two ands here? It's not necessary to have two ands when there's a list. Surely it could have been places, names and where. Also, what is added by saying it was? Surely it could have just been where you meant to travel. This is an example of how extra grammar can be added into a poem in order to achieve the aims of the poem that we mentioned at the beginning. And what about this sentence here? Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Surely this is the second part of an if clause. If you want to lose things, then practice losing farther, losing faster. We've completely missed out a clause here, and as a result we have an incomplete sentence. And with the chains of grammar loosened, there's space for all kinds of features in poetry. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a longer video on this. So while we do find examples of advanced English grammar in poetry, the grammar rules are fairly loose. The rules get a bit tighter now as we look at narratives. To explore narratives, we're going to study an excerpt from the famous book, The Lord of the Rings. Here's a famous part of Lord of the Rings, and as you would expect with novels, it's filled with adjectives. In narratives, grammar is mostly conventional, but at times, it stretches the limits. I want to draw your attention to words here that are shaded with blue. Let's look at the first sentence. Far above the Etheldwath in the west, the night sky was still dim and pale. The first question I have for you is, do we actually need the words that are highlighted in blue here? And the answer is no, we don't. And in fact, with all of the words I've highlighted in blue, we could delete them and the story would still make sense and would still be able to follow it. Why do we have these words highlighted in blue then? Well, these are long adverbials, and these are phrases that tell us more about the story. The story is not highlighted here, but to give the reader as much background and ability to see and know what's going on, the writer has added in a number of adverbials at length to tell us more about the background. Also look at the words here, clear and cold, in commas. And this is an example of an insertion. Now we're used to insertions, which are sometimes called appositives in English, which are nouns, which may define words that come before. But in narratives, we may go beyond just using nouns for this, and we may use adjectives instead. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him. Clear and cold is an adjective insertion here. that simply gives us more background to what we're talking about in the story at the time. The next part of the sentence is kind of peculiar too. The thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. Now, when we see the thought, we'd normally expect it to refer backwards to something we've already said. But when we have a that clause, the information that comes before can refer forwards. Again, we would normally expect something different. We'd normally expect perhaps an it clause. It was thought that. That's a standard advanced way of referring forwards. But in a novel, we can take this further and we can take any information and refer it forwards with a that clause. And a very common feature of novels and narratives is to introduce subordinate clauses. Subordinate clauses such as this one. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. Again, it's not necessary. It's simply adding more background information. And that is how narratives and novels create advanced English grammar. They use all kinds of methods to insert extra information into the text without breaking the flow, so that the reader can almost visualize and feel everything that they should about the situation in the author's mind. And if you want to improve your own writing further, take my Improve Your English Writing course. It has 8 hours full of videos and exercises teaching you all kinds of ways that you can make your writing more advanced. There's a link in the video description. Click on the link to find out more. As we move towards texts that are more based upon reality, the grammar rules get stricter and the language is more formal. We're now going to look at what are called persuasive texts. Texts that have elements of formality, but the main aim is to persuade you that something is true. A very common place to find persuasive writing is in the editorial of a newspaper, and this is taken from The Guardian, which is a British newspaper, from August the 18th, 2025. Now, persuasive writing is grammatically complete, but it can be semi-formal at times. You can see that here at the very beginning of this editorial. There was a time when Britain aspired to be a leader in technology. There was a time is a typical way of introducing a story, so it's less formal. Also, these days is another storytelling phrase. We also have more informal punctuation, such as the dash that you could see in red here before handing over its data. And handing over its data itself is an incomplete sentence. It should have had something before that, or more effective linking to the sentence before. But there are a number of more formal advanced English structures here. Such as in the first sentence, when Britain aspired to be a leader in technology. This is the second part of a complex sentence, and editorials such as this one are full of the range of sentences that you can get in English: simple, compound, and complex. You'll also see nouns that are followed with a number of preposition phrases, a very common feature of formal and advanced English, in exchange for the promise of a few percentage points of efficiency gains. For the promise of a few percentage points of efficiency gains. 3 different preposition phrases that all describe the word exchange. And compound nouns, such as artificial intelligence strategy. In the novel, we saw that nouns were often described with adjectives, but as we become more formal and more professional, we start to see other nouns now describing nouns themselves. And here are some more features that are common to persuasive types of text. First of all, let's look at this word aspired. When Britain aspired to be a leader in technology, what other kinds of words could we use? Well, we could have said when Britain intended. What's the difference between aspired and intended? Well, aspired is a verb with feeling. And when you're trying to persuade people, you want to choose language that creates a feeling in the reader, not just a factual piece of information. Also, consider these words highlighted in yellow: leader, supplicant. Sir Keir Starmer's government appears long on rhetoric, short on sovereignty. Leader supplicant, long short. These are examples of lexical contrast. In one sentence, leader in technology is contrasted with supplicant. Supplicant is someone who's not a leader, someone who's following someone else. Long on rhetoric, short on sovereignty. There's a contrast between something they're doing a lot of and something they're doing a little of. And this lexical contrast helps highlight differences or changes that the writer wants to highlight. Notice we've added the word worryingly here. It's not necessary, but it has an important point in an editorial or persuasive text like this. It's an opinion adverb. We add opinion adverbs to the facts to show what we think of them. And also we have this interesting structure at the end. Long on rhetoric, short on sovereignty, and built on techno-utopian assumptions. This is an example of a three-part claim. Three-part claims are commonly used in persuasive writing or speaking when you make three separate points to back up your main point in order to force your point home with more power. The language is becoming more advanced and more formal now as we look at reporting. Here's a report from Italy, who have approved the world's longest suspension bridge, and this comes from the Sky News website. For reporting texts, we use mostly formal language. It's written in the third person. We can see it being used instead of I or you or we. We also have advanced features of English such as noun clauses. Look at the first sentence. Italy's government has approved the construction of what is tipped to become. Now, in the structure the noun of, we'd normally expect a noun to come next. But in this case, we have a clause instead. What is tipped? It has a verb within it. We won't find contractions within a text like this, only the apostrophe for possession. And there's generally less emotive lexis. For example, the word impoverished contains far less emotion than other words I could have chosen, such as terribly poor. But there may still be some informal vocabulary, such as tipped here is far more informal than other words that we could have used. And here are a number of other features to notice about reporting texts. Firstly, the use of simple tenses. All of the tenses here underlined are simple. Simple tenses are used to communicate facts with the present simple, or also to report exactly how something was in the past. You can use the continuous tense as well, but the simple tense is preferred because that is what makes you believe something is true. Also, perfect to past. Notice in the first sentence, Italy's government has approved, and then later on in the text in the blue, it is believed, which became, gave. It now turns to the past. And this is a common tactic by people writing reporting texts that introduce the key points with the present perfect first and then move on to the past simple for the facts that actually happened at a particular time. Also, the paragraphs are short. Notice some of the paragraphs are only one sentence long. And reporting clauses can be inserted too. Look at the final paragraph. The Interministerial Committee for Economic Planning and Sustainable Development gave the final approval to the project at a meeting in Rome. Now, we could have stopped the sentence here, but we want to add the fact that someone reported this. The League Party of Deputy Prime Minister and Transport Minister Matteo Salvini said. And here, said is a real verb that takes tense. It's in the past tense here. So we have these reporting clauses that help us understand who said what. And now we come to the most advanced and formal English of all. This is what I call professional writing. Writing that you might do between businesses or for academic reasons. Here's a typical journal article all about the English language. Now, journal articles contain some of the most advanced English that you'll find. They can seem quite daunting. So let's read it together and then I'm going to show some features of it to you. Among the different languages spoken all over the world, English truly deserves to be given the status of world language. According to the 2019 edition of Ethnologue, published by SIL International, English ranks third, with 369.7 million native speakers, while it ranks first with 898.4 million second language speakers. By choice or compulsion, English has penetrated into many parts of the world. If we sift the annals of history, we come to know that initially this global language was imposed by the colonisers. Most of the countries shared the destiny of being under British rule, and since then English has been taught and made the medium of instruction and communication in schools and colleges, and most important, it was and still continues to be used as the language of administration. Gauging the acceptance and popularity of the language, most of the countries have crossed the Rubicon and adopted this legacy left behind by the colonial masters. So, what are the grammatical features that make this so advanced and so formal? Here are 5 features that happen over and over again in this text. Reduced passives, fronted adverbials, multi-section sentences, grammatical symmetry, and nouns containing the something of something. So let's start with the reduced passives. First, let's remind ourselves of what the passive is and what a reduced passive is. Let's start with a very simple sentence. We made a cake. This could become the cake was made by us. Cake goes to the front, we to the end, and made has the verb to be in front of it. This second sentence is the passive form. But we can reduce this too. Imagine a sentence like this. They ate the cake, which was made by us. We can reduce this passive by deleting the relative pronoun and the verb to be, just leaving the past participle. They ate the cake made by us. And this comes up several times in this journal article. Among the different languages spoken, according to the 2019 edition of Ethnologue published, and adopted this legacy left behind. And here spoken really means that were spoken. Published really means that was published. And left really means that was left. We have reduced the passives. Now, we also have some normal passives too. English truly deserves to be given the status of world language. This global language was imposed. Still continues to be used. So passives and reduced passives are a very common feature of the most formal, the most advanced English writing. We also use something called fronted adverbials. Look at the words in red here. For example, at the beginning, among the different languages spoken all over the world, English truly deserves to be given the status of world language. What's the main part of the sentence here? Well, it's the second part. English truly deserves to be given the status of world language. But the bit in red helps to describe the rest of the sentence. Now, we saw this with narratives, but here the fronted adverbials have a slightly different purpose. Usually the purpose here is to link different parts of the text together, not in order to describe a sentence in more depth. So we start off with among the different languages, and then we move from all of the different languages in the next clause to just English on its own. So there's progression being made. We use different types of phrase to achieve this. We have a participle phrase describing English at the beginning among the different languages spoken. So spoken is the participle. Then the next 2 examples in red are preposition phrases, or sometimes called prepositional phrases, according to or by choice or by compulsion. And then the last one is another participle phrase. This time it's a present participle, gauging. Academic writing is full of multi-section sentences. Look at the colours on the text here. The colours indicate the different clause within a sentence. All of the sentences have at least 2 clauses and some have 3. The first is in red, that's normally the adverbial. The second is often the main sentence, that's the part in blue. And then the green is often the third part. Sometimes this third part is the main one instead. Let's just focus on one of these examples here. According to the 2019 edition of Ethnologue published by SIL International, this is the preposition phrase that we spoke about when we looked at fronted adverbials. Then we have the main clause, English ranks third with 369.7 million native speakers. And then the final clause is the subordinate clause, while it ranks first with 898.4 million second language speakers. So many sentences in academic text have these three parts: an adverbial beginning, which could sometimes come at the end too. Then we have a main clause and a subordinate clause. Now, the main clause and the subordinate clause can be in a different order, but we often introduce this complexity into academic writing. And this helps create better links between each sentence and each clause and each idea. Another feature of this text is something called grammatical symmetry. Look at the coloured words this time. We have three different types: instruction and communication, schools and colleges, acceptance and popularity, they're in blue. Was and still continues is in red. Crossed the Rubicon and adopted this legacy, those are in green. So what do we mean by symmetry here? Well, it's to do with having the same grammatical items either side of a conjunctive. Instruction and communication, schools and colleges, acceptance and popularity. We have noun symmetry. We have noun and noun. Noun coordinating conjunction, noun. With the red part, we have verb symmetry. Was and still continues. So we have a verb phrase, was, and a verb phrase, still continues. And then in green, we have a verb and a noun repeated, like a mirror. Cross the Rubicon, verb noun, and adopted this legacy. Again, verb noun. And these elements of symmetry help to develop the text more, and they're a very common feature of highly academic writing. And finally, we have nouns containing the noun of noun. And we have many here: the status of world language, the annals of history, the destiny of being under British rule. Here we have a participle phrase that forms the noun, the medium of instruction, the acceptance and popularity of the language. So it's very common that we describe a noun with another noun in this structure, the something of something, in advanced academic texts. Take my Improve Your English Writing course. There's a link in the video description. Click on the link to find out more.